If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
Today's guest again on Horse Chat is Jochen Schleese, who talks to us, who's an absolute expert on saddlery, all things to do with saddlery, fitting saddles, and we're going to talk to him today about 10 things to watch when buying a saddle. Now, Jochen, how are you going today?
I'm doing very good. Thanks so much for asking, Glenys. How are you?
Oh, very well, very well. Now, we're going to talk about, because, a lot of people just when they're going to buy a saddle, they're not sure. They'll jump on Facebook, they'll go to a few forums, they'll ask their friends, is that going to be a problem by following the recommendations of trainers, riding buddies? I mean, what sort of things should we be looking for when we're going to buy a saddle?
I think it's absolutely incredible to listen to your coach and listen to your friends. It's an absolutely must, but we need to make very clear what are they recommending. Do they recommend the service and the quality of service they got from that one or the other company?
Yep.
Or do they recommend a specific product? I like to use an analogy. I'm from Germany, and a lot of my friends wear the shoes. We call it Adidas, and the Americans call it Adidas.
Yes.
So my foot, my friend says, you got to get the running shoe Adidas. But my foot is too small, too narrow. Right? My foot fits really, really well in Nike. So they say, get these shoes and imagine you do this with yourself. The horses are different. The riders are different. As a matter of fact, if you go on YouTube and you click on the red shoe video on our saddlefitforlife.com website, we actually made a very funny red shoe video, and which addresses this exactly. Because if I like a specific saddle, like with the analogy of my shoes, and it fits me well, and I say, hey, Glenys, you should buy this saddle, and you buy it because I'm so loving my saddle, and you said, okay, he's happy, he's successful, by the saddle. But that type of brand doesn't fit you at all. You probably had that in your life where one or the other's brand doesn't do it for you, right?
You know what, this is a bit of a problem sometimes with coaches, that you ask your instructor, what horse should I buy? And the instructor buys a horse that they would like, not necessarily one that is suitable for the student. So it's got to be exactly the same, with saddles.
Yeah.
I can certainly agree with you there, and I can see the parallels between buying a saddle and buying a horse.
I love that analogy, what you just said with your instructor. The good instructor will get a horse for you what elevates your riding skills.
Yeah,
the bad
an experienced instructor.
Exactly, right? We are so many so-called instructors out there, and most of the time they recommend a horse that you go nowhere. And you're stuck there to take the lessons over and over again. It doesn't advance. So, and the same with saddles. So if your instructor sells you a saddle because they get a lot of money for it, or they're on the payroll, no matter if it fits you or not, so long they get their commission, it's absolutely unfair for the animal because they don't get money. And if they got money, they have no use for money. They have pain. And they're not comfortable. And then the adult amateur rider, the majority of people who really love their horses, are heartbroken because they trust the trainer and then or the one or the other salesperson. So if you have a recommendation because it's a good service, it's great, but do your homework. And there's enough service out there. We have so many free videos online from saddlefitforlife.com where we share what to watch out and not just follow blindly what a riding buddy or a trainer says.
Yeah. It's sort of taking that forward and thinking about the importance. I mean, obviously you want it to be fits me, fits my horse, or is one more important than the other? What are the main things to look for on the saddle?
Yeah, and one of the things what people ask me, like you said, what is more important, does it fit me or fit my horse? The saddle is the interface between two living things.
Mm-hmm.
And when the horse is in control, the rider is in trouble. So if the rider is in control, then I would like the horse to understand what I'm trying to tell him. So the way I give my commands is to my most important aid, which is my seat. How I shift my weight in the saddle, how I'm going to be able to move my legs, my horse understands me. Sure, I could use my voice, my whip, or my spurs, but the most important part when we talk about saddle fit starts at the rider. Because if the rider doesn't have a pliable seat, what is a pliable seat? There's a school over 400 years old in Vienna, the Spanish riding school.
Yep.
And if you want to ride there, you are for 1 year on the launch line before you touch the reins to learn to swing with your waist, with your seat, with the movement, and control the horse with your seat.
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine they put you in such an uncomfortable saddle, what kills you, either in the crotch, on your seat bones, on your tailbone, on your hip, on your knee. You're going to brace yourself, right? So you never get a pliable seat. So in the old days when saddles were war, we don't have time to hold on to reins. We had weapons to have in our hands.
Yep.
So the most communication is through my midsection of my body, from the upper inner thigh up to my belly button, so my seat. So I cannot emphasize enough that it's absolutely important. It has to fit the rider first. When I'm a jumper as a jockey, a 3-day event rider, most of the time I have my foot in the stirrup and it's hung on a metal bar on the tree in 3 different positions. Those positions is determined by the ratio of your upper leg and your lower leg. Example,
yep.
If my upper leg is shorter than the lower leg, the bar has to hang forward. And 99% of all guys have a longer lower leg, opposite with women. Women have a longer femur than a lower leg. And if a femur rides in a stirrup bar where your stirrup leather is attached on the saddle, which is forward, every time you put your weight in your stirrups for jumping position, your lower legs get pulled forward. It's physics. It's not an opinion what I'm talking about here. It's like a pendulum. If the pendulum attachment is too far forward, your lower leg gets pulled forward. So it's absolutely important for event riders, short jumpers, anybody who's using those stirrups to get out of the saddle. Mm-hmm. So these are just the 2 main points for the rider. And then, of course, it goes down to the horse. For example, I like to fit and give people the tip. When you have a good riding helmet, it fits from front of the head to the back of the head, and also from the left and the right side. And then the side of the helmet is nice and flush on the side. You don't want a sombrero, like a Mexican hat, which sticks out on the side.
Yep.
So if you have the angle of the side of the helmet, the width of the helmet, and the front to back of the helmet, this chin strap, what holds the helmet on, is very loose, and the helmet is secure. Now imagine, and I always tell this to people, I said, my son-in-law has a very wide head, and his side is very sloped. When I put his helmet on, I can't watch. I can't see because it slides right onto my eye.
Yes.
My head is smaller, but my temples are steep. Right? So, and then that's how it goes with the saddle. It has to fit from front to back, then in the width for his shoulders. When you have a jumper or dressage or western, it doesn't matter what you do. If you put equipment on the saddle, on the horse's back, scab you need to slide through. And then, very important, how do the sidebar, do they wrap around the body, or do they just stick out like a sombrero? And many people who have really bad fitting helmets or bad fitting hats had to put the chin strap tight so that the helmet doesn't fly off. And many people have bad fitting saddle and over tighten. They call that term cinch burn the horse, where they get super tight on the pectoralis, and they wonder why the horse stumbles. They wonder why the horse bites you when you girth up. They wonder why they don't come when you ask them to come from the paddock. They wonder why cow kick you. It's so easy with today's. All of us have a computer now in the pocket. There are cell phones. I mean, you can Google things like that. And yet, there is a lot of opinion, we call it from the peanut gallery, who like to talk, but they don't know the why. Many people give you the how, but nobody gives you the why.
Yes.
And in our previous broadcast, I always say the people who know the how will always follow the people who know the why. And I like to, with your help and with social media, anything possible, help many people to protect themselves and avoid long-term damage by telling them, understand the why. You know, why should the helmet fit comfortable around the head? Well, that's a no-brainer. So if I fall off, my helmet doesn't fall off before I hit the concrete. Why should the saddle fit my horse? So I don't hurt him and pinch his nerve, so he bucks, falls, or gets crippled from my equipment. And this is where it really hurts. I said that before in your show, and I say it again. Many people apply unintentional pain to the horses, and I don't think even the non-educated saddle fitter out there, or their so-called self-proclaimed saddle fitter without any proper training, I don't think there's anybody else who goes out there purposely to make that horse suffer.
Yep.
Deep down, they all want to help.
Yep.
But they don't know what they don't know. You know? So if I say the green pill helps you with the stomach acid, I don't know, but it looks green, and maybe it's like green tea, and it's the worst thing you could give. That's such a bad advice, and this is unfortunately unregulated in this industry. And I cannot say enough my gratitude that I have the chance to talk to you, because through podcasts such as this and helping people to get analysis to understand why is it so important, it has to fit the rider first and then the horse.
Now, and I like what you said about, you know, people, they might give you the how but don't know the why, and I think that's it. You know, sometimes if people want to give you advice, sometimes the best thing to do if you don't understand it is to ask why and see how much depth of knowledge that they really have. So I think that just itself is a good tip. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, not to shame them, just to see maybe they are on something. If it doesn't make sense to you, and if they can explain, well, then you still have a chance to protect you and your horse.
Yes.
Excellent.
Now, if we've got a saddle and we've fitted it to ourselves, fitted it to the horse, what about, because there's circumstances where someone might have a couple of horses and they've got the same saddle. What happens if we've got more than one horse and we've got the same saddle? What can we do there?
Yeah. So when we talk to professionals, and they're trained horses, it's impossible, especially in the hunter jumper world. There are sometimes up to 10, 15 horses a day to own 10, 15 saddles. It's just not feasible. It's not realistic.
Sure.
They buy horses, they sell horses. So a professional, they have a so-called, what we call a pro fit. Okay? And the pro fit is categorized into Profit 1, Profit 2, Profit 3. Profit 1 would be if you would be a trainer or a horse owner who really loves the more Baroque style horse, the Lusitanos, Andalusian, Frisian, sort of the wider shoulder, flat-backed horses. The Profit 2 would be for your average warmblood. And the Profit 3 would be for people who buy thoroughbreds or standardbreds off the racetrack. And they're most times slimmer and thinner. And they train them and sell them as a hunter, jumper, or pleasure horse. So, and I give the analogy of I grew up in a very big family And lucky enough, I was the oldest. But my brothers got the shoes passed down. But one of the brothers had a little wider foot than the other one. The ones that fit somewhat in the length. But if you have a brother what has a very wide foot, and like I said earlier with the analogy of Adidas and Nike shoes, my foot was narrow. So only one of my brothers could wear my shoes. So while you have a certain shoe size and shoe width, what a variety of people can wear, the same with the saddle. Of course, it's nice to have a saddle to each horse, but again, it's not realistic. So my advice, if you have a bunch of horses, measure the widest horse, and then maybe have a pad what adds additional inserts. And the reality
yes.
is you have for each horse a saddle, but sometimes it's not feasible or it's not possible. The professional group their horses in groups, and if I ride 15 horses a day, I can afford 3 saddles. And with these 3 saddles, my groom, my stable help, my wife, my buddy, whoever helps me get through the day, understands, this saddle goes to Bucky, and that goes to Fiona, and what all these horses' names are, they're in the group.
Yep.
So you can do that.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yes. What about, I'm just thinking about these saddles and resale value. What happens if you find a good name brand saddle for sale? What should we be looking for there?
Yes. So I give you good advice with merchants. Okay. So I met a friend who flew to Asia, to China.
Yeah.
And he bought a black T-shirt.
Right.
Okay? And it was pennies, dirt cheap.
Yep.
And the same shirt got a little embossed logo on it.
Yep.
And that shirt was now for 350% markup. Okay?
Yes.
So the product is exactly the same. So sometimes you pay for a brand. So beware of that. What we should ask very first, is this a disposable or non-disposable saddle? People always say, what is that? Well, saddles are made, you can buy from Pakistan or from India or from Buenos Aires saddles with pad and bridle for less than $100. Really, really, really cheap. They might last you a couple months, maybe if you're lucky a year, then fall apart. And then the price goes up into the thousands of dollars. So what should you look for? Ask the person on eBay, is this saddle adjustable or not? Now here comes the trick. Everybody will say it's adjustable because there are 3 billets or there are wool flock. That is not the real answer you're looking for. You want to ask, is the saddle adjustable in the tree width? Back to the helmet. Or narrow head or wide head, that's the width. Next, is the tree angle adjustable? That's how the helmet fits on the side. That's how the saddle fits on the side of the horse. It's 2 big differences between the width of the helmet and the angle of the helmet, how it sits on a human head. Same with the saddle.
Yep.
How wide the tree is, and then how it wraps around the rib cage. So if they say, well, it has one of those keys, and I can narrow and widen the angle, well, that's great. But how does that help you in the width? What good does it do if I give my son-in-law a helmet where the side flares up and down, but it doesn't even sit around his head? It just sits on top of his head like a tennis ball. It doesn't. It's just not adjustable. So beware about that. If you look for a good find on eBay, ask, is it adjustable in the width, in the angle? And of course, you want to make sure for the comfort of the muscle of the horse's back, is it flocked? Flocked means, can I make the bottom smooth again? Is it wool flocked? Really, really important, those 3.
Okay. Now, if we do need the repairs, what are the most expensive repairs if we get a used saddle that needs some work?
Well, it's kind of like a car.
Yep.
The more you drive your car, the more wear and tear is on your tires,
Sure.
etc., etc. So if you're independent, wealthy, you always buy new, great.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you buy a used car, and then you look at, what's the tire look like? What's the mileage? So with the saddle, it's a little different. There it's more, you can buy a very good brand saddle, and it's already burned inside out. Okay, so that means the most important substance of leather is water. And second, goat grease. Grease or fat, it's something that leaves the leather alive.
Yes.
And because the sweat can burn the leather from the inside out, most of the time the sweat comes from the bottom. And when the panel has to be replaced, that's a third of the new price of the saddle.
Mm.
So that's a lot of money.
Yep.
So that's very expensive.
Yep.
Seat replace. Like right now, I'm on seminar. I'm teaching a lot of people here in Miami, and it's super hot here in Florida, and the humidity is insane. And you don't even have to ride in your sweat. So when you ride in sweat, you're absolutely soaked, also through your breeches and on your seat. So the human sweat can also destroy the seat as well as the friction and the sun. So the seat, same thing, third of the cost. And the other third is the flaps, of course. Sometimes people say, yeah, but my horse flipped over and I heard a broken tree is expensive to repair. Not really anymore. More and more manufacturing specialize on able to fix the tree.
Okay.
The more expensive parts are the flaps, the seat, and the panel. Because once the leather is dead, in other words, it breaks, then that's it. Most people are shy about the billets, but that is just like your car tires. So if the car has no more tread, you either drive on blank tires, which is very unsafe, or you buy yourself a set of tires, and the billet that holds the saddle to the horse is not the most expensive.
Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting that the tree's not as expensive as it was because, once you would just completely avoid a saddle if it had a broken tree. But now you're saying it might not be as expensive to repair as, say, a flap or a seat or something that needs repairing. Yeah.
So the trees used to be expensive, but now you get them. The most inexpensive ones are from England. You get the wood trees for £35. They're so dirt cheap.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Maybe $70.
Yeah.
And some manufacturers use plastic tree.
Uh-huh.
They're like $3.50.
Wow.
The tree is really inexpensive. Of course, you have other companies who use a little bit more expensive trees, but that is not as expensive as the other items I mentioned.
Right. I'm just thinking about the other incidental costs. What else could arise in the way of incidental costs when you buy a saddle?
Well, my car is time to replace. And when I see a car and I like it really, and then I see the price tag, and then I look, I think I can swing it. And when the price and then the salesperson puts the bottom line on it, such as transport fee, tire tax, and something you never heard, all of a sudden there's another $5,000 on the bottom of the bill, and I just changed it. And the same thing happens to a saddle. The saddle, you might buy it on eBay, and shipping can be horrendous. We have a lot of people who are really interested in our saddle in South America and in Brazil. You have a 45% import duty. So beware what your import duty is when you buy saddles. On on-site evaluation, I have seen people who charge $250 just to give you an opinion because of whoever they are. Some people are included in the saddle. I have nothing, and we charge too. If a professional comes out and spends time with you, he needs to be paid for his knowledge and wisdom and time. And everybody pays for that. But if you don't calculate for it, that's an additional charge what may come to it. Taxes, of course, and sometimes a saddle doesn't go so like a Western saddle. Western saddle most of the time has the fenders and the cinch and the pads is all there. An English saddle has nothing.
Yep.
Has no stirrup leathers, has no stirrup irons, but the girth, that all adds up. So that can be sometimes, these are very good question, because this comes very often up, Glenys, that people say, oh my God, I was so excited to get a new saddle. Now I'm sick to my stomach because all these additional costs.
Yes. Yep. And when you do get that saddle, because everyone wants to talk about the different features, and especially the manufacturers want to talk about the saddle features, but what do you think is the most important when we're considering a saddle? What should we be looking at when we're buying a saddle to do with the features?
That is the easiest answer of all, and yet the most hidden answers in most manufacturers, retailers, or saddle fitters. It is the length of the saddle.
Okay.
We have today equipment what measures the heart rate of the horse, the cadence of the horse, the gait symmetry, the stride in the gallop, the height in the jump, the takeoff, jump. We have so much technology to exactly analyze how good the horse performs or how much stress the horse has. Now, from the medicine, we know when we take a blood test and our cortisol level is up, I am in stress. When a horse is ridden in saddle A and he breathes normal, he just walks a circle left, he works a circle left, now he puts another saddle on. Nothing changes the saddle. He walks a circle left, he walks a circle right, and his heart rate is all the way up. What stresses this animal? Heart rate goes up, cortisol level is up, that's how you know stress. So where am I going with this? Very easy. The front of the saddle is where the saddle should sit behind the shoulder blade. And on the shoulder blade on top is a big blobby stuff, we call it cartilage. Same stuff your nose is made or your ears are made of. So once that cartilage is damaged, this is it. The horse is permanently lame. You cannot ride anymore. Cartilage does not grow. But that's not it. It's a small, irritating spot in the Chinese medicine. When they talk about acupuncture, there's a bladder meridian line on the horse's back, and there's one point what's called the BL13, the bladder meridian point 13, that's the lung reflex point. When you press this, so let's talk about pressure. People can analyze, when I squish a lemon, that's a lot of pressure. I need to press very hard to get the juice out of the lemon. I don't know, I have to press maybe a tenth of that pressure to squish a grape where people make wine from. So we call that grape pressure or lemon pressure. So when you go on this bladder meridian point 13, that's what is the lung reflex point. And you put less than grape pressure on that spot, and you have a heart monitor, you see how the horse elevates in his heart rate, and he's stressed. So we know what is being taught in pony club, in soldiers, people do not and should never, ever, ever put pressure to damage the cartilage. There's people now on YouTube. You can type in dissect the horse and saddle fit. There's veterinarians who have that horse on the table and put a tree on it. Says here, typical damaged shoulder. See how the tree fits right in there? Pretty gross.
Okay.
And but that is the severe case. Many, many horses have such a psychological trauma because they're so stressed because the saddle is too long. The length of the saddle is the number one thing. And you can say, well, then I push it back. No, you can't. Because if the saddle puts any kind of a pressure on the lumbus versus processes, if you put pressure on those lumbers, the horse will buck. That's why we call it the buck reflex point. If the horse is a fire horse is more sensitive, they react to fly immediately, they will tell you. But if you have an earth horse or wood horse, very calm in there, you can do all kinds of videos. They will never fight back. Okay, so if you put that, they will deform, and then you start injecting the SI, the stifle, the hogs. Why? Because they don't work anymore, because the horse is upside down and locks. So the pressure on the loin is just as bad as the pressure on the shoulder. Now imagine, you bought a saddle, it's your price range, it's perfect, you love it, it fits you, but it's too long. You cannot shorten the saddle. That's the only thing, no matter how expensive it was, no matter how Olympian, how many people ride in that, the length you can change. A good adjustable saddle, you can change in the width, in the angle, in the stuffing, in the channel. You can change the billet. You can change the flocking. But saddle, you cannot change in the length. So that's why I was chuckling a little bit by saying, if you ask me what's the most important part, it is the length.
Okay.
And yet, why does nobody talk about it? Because if you really pay attention to it, you have to go a little bit more active, and you may not sell so many saddles. Doesn't mean you never sell saddles, but you have to work a little harder. And we know all the mentality is we want to get more money for less work. The horse doesn't care when it hurts.
I'm just thinking that what if we need that bigger saddle in the saddle support area if the horse allows then? What do we do?
Okay. So another very interesting myth, and in one of our talks we had the 8 myths of saddle sitting, and that's the same thing. So when we look at a Western saddle, a Western saddle measures where the pommel starts and the cantle, the distance straight across. On an English saddle, we measure diagonal to a saddle nail. That's what we call the seat size.
Yep.
And the saddler can place the nail wherever I want. I can sell you a saddle from pommel to cantle. It measures 16 inch. And I can place that nail at 16.5, 17, 17.5, 18, 18.5.
Okay. Yep.
And you have never, ever, ever changed the feel how it feels to you. So the biggest myth is this nail, and that saddle seat in the English saddles is meant for mass production, wholesale retail. You will never buy a shoe, cheap or expensive, unless you try it on. For example, in all the shoes I have, I range from size 11 to 13. Because in this one manufacturer, I have a 13. In the other manufacturer, I have an 11. And I measure the shoe on the bottom. The length's the same. So how can they call them 11? Isn't that something? And the same with the saddle. If you measure pommel to cantle, that's the most important part. So 16-inch pommel to cantle. It's a very large saddle. And 16-inch, the back of the shoulder where the bladder meridian point is, the lung reflex points. So if you measure from that to the last bit, you will find that is, on many horses, anywhere from 16 and sometimes up to 20 inches long.
Wow.
So the majority of the saddle support area can fit. Now, here comes the kicker. If I make the panel, the bottom part, that sits on that saddle support area, 4 inch longer, like 2 inches to the front, 2 inches to the back, now I have a super large bottom with a smaller one on top. Now, you could argue 2 points. You could say, well, that makes no sense because the whole horse is buried under this incredible long saddle. Or you can say, oh, this is better for weight-bearing surface. No. Absolutely not, because we talked about earlier about lemon pressure. The horse takes a lot of contact and weight and pressure behind the cartilage and the shoulder blade and the lung meridian point, and in front of the lumbar area on top of the ribs. And if your horse is 15-inch, 16-inch, or 17, that's all you got. And the average horse has 4-inch wide, 16-inch long on the each side. That's 128 square inch. That carries 350 pounds. And that is the saddle, the rider, the boots, the helmet, the whip, the shoes, the clothes. If your saddle, however, is too short and you don't use the whole surface area and you are a heavy rider, then you have higher pounds per square inch. And as we know from Newton, when he talks about velocity and pressure, and from the medical field, when we know at 4.566 kPa, in Europe we say kilopascal, in Britain or in North America we say PSI, pounds per square inch. Same thing, it's just a measure of units. Then the blood flow and the nutrition to the muscle is gone, and we have atrophy. Back to your original question. If I need a larger saddle, but my saddle support area is small, there's 3 major things you do not want. Number 1, you do not want a long pommel. The pommel is the part on the front of your saddle, and that is meant to be short or really, really long to the front. In North America, we have a sport what's called the walking horse or the big lick. Those saddles are 24 inches long. That means from the nail to the cantle, 24 inches. But where the pommel rises and the cantle is, it's just 16 inches. So they extend in front of the rider's, for lack of word, I use the word crotch. So in front of the rider's crotch, they extend the tree to the front to make the tree super, super long to ride and put the rider way back in the saddle. For the sport, I cannot endorse. I know I'm going to get a lot of slack for it, but for me, I don't think a gaited horse should be in pain to move comfortable in the gait. Mm-hmm. We do not, with all the knowledge we have, need to increase the pain to get the horse into a certain pattern we desire for a useless sport. I'm sorry that I'm so vocal on this, but that makes me absolutely mad when I use an animal for the pleasure of a human.
Well, I think, when they were first starting off, the actual use of the Tennessee walking horses was for the property owners, wasn't it, to cover large amounts of ground in a short period of time and a very, very comfortable ride. But, yes, I think the welfare of the horse has got to be a consideration. They're not just machines.
You can have a very nice, there's nothing wrong with a good Tennessee walking saddle so long you do not hit in an area where the horse will deform. So the seat can be also made longer when you make the metal point stick forward. We talked about that in our 8 myths of saddle pit, where the 3 points go forward. And then the horse gets a little bit more short trotty and snaps the front leg like soldiers in the Second World War in Germany saluted. Now, if you fancy that kind of a short trot, then get a saddle that pokes in the shoulder, and you get that. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to damage the shoulder and don't want that ineffective, this wrong trot, then you get this saddle with a 3 point but goes backwards. Every saddle was built hundreds of years ago. Yeah. Last but not least, the way the panel is made in the back. I can have a huge panel and give you this big fairy tale story of, weight-bearing surface. I yet have to see a rider who sits on the top of the cantle. That's hard. Top of the cantle. They don't sit, nobody sits there. So why do you want to extend the panel to the rear? Western, I understand. You need to put your kitchen, your tent, your food, your water, your gun, whatever you want to attach to the saddle. But in an English saddle, you don't carry all that stuff. So you do not need to worry if you're a larger person. If you don't extend the pommel, you don't extend the cantle or the panel, and you don't go with a forward-facing 3 point. Mm-hmm. You'll be surprised how comfortable you're a larger person. You can sit on a horse so long as in that saddle support.
Just go into a bit more depth about, 17-inch saddles, but why do 17-inch saddles from different manufacturers never feel the same? Have you explained that, or can you go into a bit more depth about that? Because it's a bit of a mystery.
I could draw that for you.
Yeah.
But if you visualize the saddle in front of you, you're looking down bird's view. Okay? Yep. Let's say next time you're in the tack shop, or next time you're in your riding arena, take 5 minutes and put 5 or 6 saddles side by side. Mm-hmm. And then you take the tape measure and you measure from nail to cantle. And then at the same time from pommel to cantle.
Okay.
You will see, you will have maybe 3 or 4 saddles that measure 17 inch. Mm. But the pommel to cantle are 3 different sizes. And that's what you feel. You don't feel where the saddler put the nail.
Okay.
You feel with the pommel and the cantle comes, and that's why it is different. Because the nail, or the saddles are labeled, it's an arbitrary number. It's a number what they put it there for. For example, my wife told me once, if a lady is a size 6, but her friends is a size 4, she wants to buy a dress what is a size 4 too, and if the company says this dress is actually 4 and in reality it's a 6, the lady feels better. So what does the saddle company say? Oh, let's move the nail back.
Yeah.
So the rider thinks, oh, not as big. Oh, I write this 17.
Okay.
All they did is move the nail back to make you feel better.
Yep.
So always measure pommel to cantle because that's the true size. Everything else is focus.
Okay. That makes sense. Now, is there anything else, Ian, any other considerations for the saddle fit that we should talk about before we finish off?
Well, in the beginning of our talk is once you fit a saddle what fits you, unless you gain or lose 35 pounds each direction, it's a 70 pounds fluctuation. Most of the time, that saddle becomes like a shoe to you. Your bottom just sits in, your knee feels great, your leg feels good. Unfortunately, the horse doesn't stay the same unless it's a wooden horse, a rocking horse, or a mechanical horse. A horse what is carrying a human will do that so it doesn't break apart and doesn't fall or trip. So it tries to balance you. And you're trying to sit on the saddle balance so you don't fall off. So there is a certain, if you take a stick, you lift it up, and you put your hands in the middle of the stick will balance. So now the stick is the horse's ears all the way to the tail. And somewhere there's the balance point of that horse's spine. Now you put the stick upright, and you balance it on your palm. That's the rider's spine. Okay, and that has to be aligned. If your hand tilts one way or the other, you will have a very hard time to balance that stick. Are you following me so far?
Yes, I think so. Yep.
So if the saddle where you sit is not balanced, you're cramping with your knees, you're holding on the rein, you keep falling off one side, and the horse lands hard on the front left. Oh, I wonder why he got splints all the time. Or then he gets lame, then he has suspension injury because you're wobbling or falling from one side because you don't have the balance. So the balance is, to answer your question, but just to consider, make sure when you sit in the saddle, do not have any force in your muscles. Just sit relaxed. Does the saddle let you sit without you fighting to be over the horse's balance? People ask me all the time, what is it? Well, watch bullfighter or watch a rodeo rider. They all sit at the base, at the wither of the horse. That is where the horse's balance point is. If they would sit somewhere else, guess what? They would fall off. They wouldn't win the rodeo. So the balance point, everybody who ever ridden bareback will never sit on top of the withers, hurts very much. And they will never sit in the middle of the horse's back because the horse turns fast around. You'll fly off.
Yep.
So the balance point is, does the rider sit at the base of the withers? And it's the the seat area where my pelvis sits on. Is it flat? So it don't tilt forward. So that's something very important to be balanced.
Okay.
Then the next part, I don't want to damage the bone on the withers. The largest organ of the animal is the skin. And the highest point is not the ears, it's not the poll, it's not the neck. The highest point where the skin drapes over is that withers. And when the saddle hits that withers and cuts that skin, it takes forever and sometimes never to really heal and close again.
Yep.
So you want to make sure that metal plate is away. The third one is the channel width, the space over the horse's spine. Many Indians, horse people, horse specialists, people who work with biomechanics, they call the spine the river of energy. Just like on humans, there's a hole all the way in the spine where the nervous system, all the nerves go down the spine and then to the various organs and muscles, etc. So if you put pressure on that spine, you have all kinds of problems. Make sure the channel is wide enough. Most people know the next one. The saddle shouldn't wibble and rock like a teeter-totter, and it shouldn't sit on the horse's back like a chair, right, where you have 4 hard contact points. It should have a nice, smooth surface. Unfortunately, the easiest one can be sometimes a problem is the billet alignment. Okay? So many saddles have 3 or 4 billets. Mm-hmm. Or if you have long billets, you can adjust them. And how the billets are aligned is very, very important. So make sure you have enough short billets and make sure you can move the long billets to various positions. Okay. Then we have straightness and triangle and width, which we've talked about already.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, yeah, and another one. You know, I know you've got a family history, but it's like you live and breathe saddles and fitting of saddleries. And I think everyone can understand that we can ask you that, you know, you talk about the how, but also the why and the depth of knowledge you've got. It's pretty incredible that we've been talking for so many hours. It's not just now, it's, you know, all the previous times that you've talked about different related topics to do with saddlery, fitting of saddlery. So, yes, great to have you on the show. Great to talk to you. Now, the Saddle Fit for Life, is that the best way that people can contact you? Or have you got other contact details if people would like to contact you? What's the best way? Yep.
The easiest way to contact me is to contact me under info@saddlefitforlife.com. That's very easy. Info and then saddle, SADDLE, fit, FIT, and then the number 4.
Yep.
And then life.com, life.com.
Yep.
So if you can email me on that. Same, this is also my website, www.saddlefitforlife.com. You will see tons of videos, and we are open. We have many government supports, many associations who work with us together. Mm-hmm. Veterinarians get a lot of credits when they take our courses, so do the trainers. So because it's not selling a product, it's combining the knowledge, what we lost in the Industrial Revolution, to protect the horse and rider from long-term damage.
Yep.
And just like you hear your mom or your grandma or your ancestor said, when you give, you get back 10 times.
For sure.
The knowledge. And people like to help each other. Of course, people like to be nasty. But in general, I like to say people like to help.
Okay.
And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make people aware, and hopefully they don't cripple their horse for life unintentionally.
Yep. If people would like those contact details as well, just go to horsechats.com. And even if you search for Jochen, which is Jochen, and I think you'll find all of his other chats as well as this one. And I would urge you to go through right from the beginning. And if you want to know a little bit more about saddlery, or a lot more about saddlery and the fitting of saddlery, to go through all those chats. So looking forward to catching up with you again, Jochen. I'm sure you'll have another very interesting topic that's going to help us help our horses. Thank you.
I would love that. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.